On today's show, we're talking Rebels. It came back. It was crazy. We're going to break it down, go in depth, and talk about you know who's, you know what. We're also going to talk about the next Dave Filoni animated series. Due to some domains being registered online, we may have our first peek at what that series will be called and what it will be about. Very excited to get into that. We're going to touch on episode 9 news. J.J. Abrams says he's got a script. He's pumped. He's ready to go. They start shooting in July. We're going to go over what we can expect from that film. And we've got a bunch of fan questions, including how far Thrawn will go in the canon timeline, whether or not he'll make it out of Rebels. We're also going to talk about balancing the Force in Episode 9. How could that manifest itself? And has the Force ever truly been balanced? And we'll finish off talking about the Sith Jar Jar Binks theory. This is Nerds Talk Star Wars. Let's do this thing. What is up, YouTube? It's Josh. This is the Den of Nerds, and this is our Sunday night Star Wars show. I was incredibly busy this week, so I wasn't able to reach out to any guests, but that's okay because there's plenty to talk about. I'm going to break it all down for you, but if you want to, let me know in the comment section. What other YouTubers out there? What other people within the Star Wars fandom do you think I should reach out to get on the show? I'm working on a list myself, and since I'm probably going to be talking about Star Wars for the rest of time, we've got plenty of time to get some awesome guests on the show. That's going to be really, really cool. So, like I said, let me know about that in the comment section below. Now, let's just jump right into our first topic of today's show. This would be Star Wars Rebels. It came back with 2 new episodes earlier in the week. Holy cow, they absolutely blew me away. But I do want to say, massive spoiler warning for those of you that have not watched the episode. Now, I say massive spoiler warning, and I did a video earlier. Oh, by the way, leave if you don't want spoiled. Here we go. So I did the video earlier in the week talking about Kanan's sacrifice. Now, somebody hit me up on that video and said, hey, man, this is pretty spoilery. And sort of, they're right. But the thing is, the Disney XD YouTube channel literally had Kanan Jarrus's death, or the death of Caleb Dune, on one of their videos, and they put it up in a clip. I couldn't believe it. Like, what is this now? Is this how we do things now? We give it away. We do all the awesome spoilers. But in either case, guys, yeah, Kanan died. It was absolutely crazy. So I want to go in depth on Rebels, what I thought of the episode. So the first episode starts with Kanan sort of meditating, right? And I think he was just going over a lot of different things. I mean, you know, it's touched on later on in the episodes that Kanan never wanted to go to war, and yet he says to Ezra that he has to lead the mission. We're going to need that if we want to save Hera and everybody. And I think that Kanan is finally at this place where he understands what a big deal the rebellion is and how important it is for them to win and to stop the darkness of the Empire from going in. He goes to cut his hair. He goes very, very clean cut. And, you know, I talked about this in the video earlier, but this seemed very reminiscent of like the Last Jedi rites, like the way that a Jedi will sort of clean up right before their last hurrah, their last sacrifice, their death, right? And so this is, I think, when I first saw Luke in The Last Jedi, when he comes out and he looks different, he looks more cleaned up, you know what I mean? Less gray in the beard and stuff. I was like, okay, well, he's preparing for the last rite. For some reason, that made sense to me. And I think Kanan sort of mirrored that, right? He was getting ready to die. And there were a little bit foreshadowing, you know, here and there, a couple moments here and there. Very, very cool to see the crew working together. But just there was this reverence within Kanan the whole episode. The way he talks to Sabine and Ezra and tells them that may the Force be with them, you know, and just he struck me as a dude who was sort of walking through time, being completely present and knowing exactly what was going to happen and what needed to happen. We of course get the love of Hera finally confessed, the kiss between her and Kanan, and then the sacrifice, guys. Holy crap. It really choked me up when I saw it. He's able to stand there and hold back the fueling depot from exploding. Hera goes in, he sort of pushes her back, and then his sight comes back. And I saw some people talking about this online, and I think I don't want to look too far into it, man. It's just the Force. It's just he is about to become one with the Force, and in that moment, he wanted to see her with his mortal eyes one last time, and I think that that's what happened there. There's no other explanation needed. Kanan did something absolutely insane. I mean, the strength of him in that moment to hold the whole depot back from exploding and push her with one hand and to have his eyes come back. I mean, it's insane, but I think that that's what you can do when you're tapped into the force like that, especially in moments of extreme stress and in moments of extreme need, right? It just made sense to me perfectly that he would be able to do that. And I think what else is kind of cool about the episode? I really like Thrawn in both of these episodes because we hear about the TIE Defender project. You see Tarkin, and they're talking about the Stardust project, which of course is the Death Star by Krennic. And you see that the Emperor has sort of shifted and kind of wants the Death Star to be the way they go about it. And what's funny is if you read the Thrawn novel, there's a meeting between Thrawn and Palpatine towards the end of that book where Thrawn asks him about the Death Star, and he says, "Look, one, I don't think this is a good plan because you're going to centralize all your power and you'd be better off with a fleet, which could subjugate people at multiple times in multiple different places in the galaxy. And number two, kind of worried, if you got this big Death Star thing, what if you decide to turn it on my people? What if you decide to turn it on the Chiss? I'm not down with that." And so I found that very cool because I think that whatever comes of that meeting, which, was probably blown up because Governor Price allows the production of the TIE Defender to be kind of brought down to the level of really not working. So they have to go with the Death Star. But I found that it was a really cool little tie to Kanan because I could just see the frustration on Thrawn. And he left immediately. He wasn't playing. He was like, let's go now, right? And that sort of opens it up for Governor Price to make that mistake. Now, in the second half of the episode, we have a lot of mourning, a lot of quiet moments with the characters. It was very, very nice. But I like how it moved the story ahead. First, you start off with them trying to figure out what they're going to do. They want reinforcements from Yavin, but Ezra says that's not going to happen. Hera's not even ready. She can't even talk to people at that point. And I thought that was cool, right? Like, show us how it hurts. Show us those moments, man. They can't just like snap right back into it and make these plans, right? So I'm glad that we took that time, but I'm also glad that they found that they actually had attained a victory. That was important for the Ghost and important for Kanan's arc. Realistically here, Kanan, by doing this and allowing them to escape, but being the target and allowing the TIE Defender project to be delayed, maybe inevitably, literally changes the course of the entire galaxy. So I felt like that was a really good legacy moment for him, but it was very important for the crew of the Ghost to know that they didn't fail and that Kanan's sacrifice was not in vain and that he did this, maybe even knowing what would happen. So I felt like that was incredible. We also get a lot with Ezra and the wolves. And I saw people talking about this online too. There's some confusion about what exactly is going on with these wolves. And once again, I don't think it's something worth, overthinking that much. These are just the Force talking to him. And I think what's going to happen is he has to go. There's secrets in the temple. He has to go there, figure that out. And I think he's going to commune with Yoda one more time, because the last time that he spoke to Yoda was when he was in the temple, allowing them to commune, which was really cool. So I think what's going to happen is they're going to get some wisdom from Yoda, maybe a better understanding of what is happening in the galaxy, and some secrets that will hopefully help a rebellion. So I'm very excited, man. I got to tell you, I thought the comeback for Rebels was absolutely amazing. And it's almost over. Like, I can't believe it's going to fly by. But I believe, unless I'm mistaken, we get 2 episodes next week. And then we get an episode and the hour finale. So we get an hour and a half in 2 weeks from now. And man, I'm so excited. Such a great show. I thought they were awesome. But let me know in the comment section, guys. What do you think about the Rebels comeback? What do you think about Kanan sort of not being around anymore? I mean, that's pretty tough. And what do you think about the galaxy and the whole shape of the conflict between the Empire and the Rebellion being sort of changed because of what happened in this episode of Rebels? I find that very cool. I'm interested to hear what you guys think in the comment section below. All right, so let's talk the possibility of the next animated series by Dave Filoni being revealed to us. This was a story broke on StarWarsNewsNet.com. Guys, if you're a hardcore Star Wars fan like I am, go to StarWarsNewsNet.com. They aggregate stories from all over the web. They break great stories. They have really in-depth stuff. They just made a timeline of all of the canon material, which is like brilliant. It would have been like a thesis project for me, and these guys just did it over there. But this story is on StarWarsNewsNet.com. Now, apparently, there was a domain registered for Star Wars Resistance. And a lot of people are believing that because this followed similar patterns to what happened when they registered Star Wars Rebels, that Dave Filoni's next animated series will be Star Wars Resistance. Okay. And real quickly, I just want to talk about why do we think Dave is doing a new animated series? Well, first of all, because we know he has said as much in different interviews. And when I was at Celebration, I saw that panel with him and Pablo. He talked about many, many things coming. You know, he's so cryptic and he's so good at sort of telling us things without telling us things, but we know that they're coming in there. But beyond all of that, in 2016, he actually removed himself as the active showrunner for Star Wars Rebels. If I'm being honest, I think some of the problems we had last season, some of the problems we had at the beginning of this season are because he was not directly involved anymore. But he was put in charge of like the animation division at Lucasfilm. So now instead of just being the showrunner of one show, he's in charge of all of their developing properties in animation. And so that is why we think we're getting this new show. Now look, Star Wars Resistance, immediately, to me, what that means is we're going to get a Star Wars Rebels-like show with the Resistance in the timeline of the new era of canon, this current saga. And wow, if that is indeed the case, which I believe that it is, holy crap, that is freaking amazing. Like, I really do want to be messing around in that time period. There's so much that we don't know about what's going on in the current saga films, and a big complaint about the canon junkies, or by the canon junkies rather, is that there's too many gaps, too much stuff has not been explained. If we get the Star Wars Resistance animation series, and we get more Snoke, we get more of figuring out the Knights of Ren, more what's going on with Kylo Ren, and the Resistance themselves with Leia. Wow, that is going to be really, really cool. More Poe Dameron, more of all of that. I think it could be very interesting. Somebody said online that if they have a time gap, a big, big time jump between 8 and 9, you could rest the show right in there. I'm down with that. Honestly, though, I kind of hope that it happens after episode 9. So after episode 9, we start this new series. That would be really cool. But then again, is it the Resistance still? We don't really know. Could be the Rebellion now. Who knows? So maybe it has to be set a little bit before it. Either way, I want to know. I want to check it out. I'm excited. I should mention it's just a rumor. Like, you know, let's kind of curb our enthusiasm here. But that is the rumor right now, that we are going to get the next animated series as Star Wars Resistance. Let me know in the comment section. Like, would you be excited for that? What would you want the show to explore? Who do you think the main characters should be if it's set with the Resistance? Really curious to hear what you guys think about that in the comment section below. So hit me up. All right, let's roll into our last topic that is not fan questions. This has to do with episode 9. Apparently, J.J. Abrams has a script, right? So he was on the Colbert Show and he was talking about episode 9. He said, yeah, we've got a script and I'm super happy about that. And that's not something I'm used to. Now, let's go back to The Force Awakens. Originally, there was a different writer than the one that we got. So essentially what happened was JJ and Kasdan, I believe, took over and sort of were working from the script they originally had, but sort of redesigning it on the go. That's where you get those famous photographs of Kasdan and JJ on set looking at the script with the red paper and stuff like that. So they were sort of putting stuff together, making it work on the fly, on the go. And there was a lot of stuff that went wrong with episode 7, you know, famously Harrison Ford breaking his ankle, his leg, he gets in the plane crash. There's just so much stuff, right? So imagine being in that scenario, but you're making the script kind of as you go along as well. Whenever I hear about production problems like this, I always think of Lost in La Mancha, which is a great documentary about the Terry Gilliam attempt to make a Don Quixote film. It's amazing. It really showcases how bad things can go. And apparently there's a curse around that Don Quixote film. But I think Terry did eventually make it, but I haven't seen it. But I always think about that sort of a situation. Or even when you look back at the original Star Wars production, tons of problems, man. Tons of problems with that film. It's a miracle they even got it together. But JJ said he's very excited. He and Chris Terrio knocked that script out. So if we think about it, they pitched very early in the year, and now they have a script. Like, holy cow, that's a really fast turnaround. But Chris Terrio, great writer, you know, done some great things, done some not so great things, you know, The Martha moment from Batman v Superman comes to mind. That was not good, Chris, but he's done plenty of great things out there. So I'm excited. So one of the things they brought up on Jedi Council was that, at least on paper, the current saga has an ending, and that's true. And as a Star Wars fan, that's kind of very intriguing to understand, right? Like, oh my God, they figured out an ending to this whole crazy thing. Wow. I don't know. Not too much to glean from it. They will start shooting in July, and I can't wait. Like, I can't wait to start making more videos about episode 9. We've got a fan question about episode 9, so we'll get into that in just a bit here. But that is the official story. They have a script, so that's good news for Star Wars fans. What do you like? Isn't that kind of crazy to think about, that there is an ending on paper somewhere? So let me know in the comment section. Did you hear anything else about this story? What do you think about the script being done? It was a pretty quick turnaround. You think JJ's going to bring us home, as it were, or are you still worried about him sort of doing a retelling of Jedi? I don't know. I don't really think we got to worry about that. And I think it's perfect that we're going to get JJ now. But I definitely want to know what you guys think about all of that in the comment section below. All right, so let's get into some fan questions here. I wanted to leave plenty of time to do this. And the first question, this is a question that was sort of brought up by two people on the last week's episode. And by the way, guys, please leave questions in the comment section below that you want me to address with my guest or by myself in next week's episode or an episode past that. So please, like, if you got a cool question, you want me to cover something, I definitely want to get you guys involved and talk about those sort of questions. So put your questions down in the comment section below. But this question was brought up by Milo Naraho, who was a big fan, watched the Last Jedi live streams. He's a fan of Rebel Scum podcast, and he's been very supportive of us. So thanks, Milo. And John, oh my God, I'm going to butcher this name, Razmirik. John Razmirik. Yeah, John, thanks for the question, man. So the question is about Thrawn. Do we know if he'll make it out of Rebels, and what do we think is going to be coming next for the Grand Admiral? So we do know that Thrawn will outlive director Krennic. This was said by Dave Filoni because he got asked this question, and he said, well, he will live out his brother. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, the voice actor for Thrawn and the voice actor, or rather the actual actor that plays, oh no, it's not Krennic, it's Galen Erso, I apologize. They are brothers. And so the fact that Galen Erso dies in, no. Wow, this is embarrassing on camera. I know that maybe it is Krennic. Oh, geez, I should have been more prepared for this. But in either case, one of the characters that is in Rogue One, I'm really leaning towards Ben Mendelsohn, is indeed, oh God, bug me. But yeah, one of those characters dies in Rogue One. They actually both die in Rogue One. And we know that Thrawn will outlive them. So the question becomes, well, he'll probably make it out of Rebels then, because we think Rebels will sort of stop right before the Battle of Scarif. It's possible they'll do a version of the Battle of Scarif at the very end of the episode, or at the very end of this season. That would be pretty epic. I'd love to see that whole battle from the perspective of Hera and whoever's in the Ghost with her during those moments. So, but we know that Thrawn's going to end from there. Now, what do we think is going to happen with Thrawn after this? Well, okay, so the fanboy in me is like, keep this dude around for as long as possible. I want to see him go back out to the Chiss higher ascendancy. I want to see him reunited with Vanto, with Eli, who is a character from the Thrawn novel. By the way, if you haven't read the newest Thrawn novel by Timothy Zahn, came out last year, big mistake on your part. That book is absolutely amazing. And I actually had the distinct pleasure to sit down and talk to Mr. Timothy Zahn about that book. And he just had this huge smile on his face. He loves these characters. He loves these stories. And of course, as the creator of that character from the Heir to the Empire series, it's just awesome to have him back into the fold and doing more Thrawn stuff. So as a big fanboy, I want Thrawn to live forever. I want to go back. I want to see the Chiss. And there's also room, especially with the exploration of canon, with the Dan and Dave's films, with Rian Johnson's new trilogy, with the television shows, there's room to be exploring more with the Chiss. So I would like that. There is also that thing about that power that's out there in the unknown regions. Don't really think that was Snoke anymore. Could still be some kind of a threat. Perhaps the Chiss and Thrawn will have to deal with that. But the question you guys were talking about was, especially with Milo's question, was about the Bendu and how the Bendu had predicted his death. Well, if you actually watch that episode, he predicts Thrawn's defeat, not his death. And so the defeat that Thrawn will incur is that cold embrace from like thousands of hands or whatever that the Bendu's talking about. Super cryptic, could mean a ton of different things, but it is possible that the defeat of the Empire would see the exit of Thrawn. Now, what is very interesting here is that Thrawn's original plan, the only reason he's with the Empire, because he's kind of an honorable dude. Like, Thrawn is not a just total villainous evil guy. Even though he's very cutthroat and very strategic, he's not like pure evil, right? The reason he's helping the Empire out is because of this threat in the unknown regions. And his original plan was to come work for the Empire and either weaken our galaxy to the point where that threat would choose us as a target rather than the Chiss, or formulate an alliance with the Empire to be able to then defeat that threat when the time came. And so, what if it was possible that all that Thrawn was doing was actually to weaken the Empire? That in some crazy way, he actually did want to weaken the Empire, especially after the Emperor was like, "No, we're going with the Death Star. I want him." So that could be very, very interesting. I don't know if we'll ever get Thrawn in a movie. That would be very awesome, but I almost feel like the saga film is going to go a different way. But it's very possible that he could stick around. So the I guess the long and short of it is we don't know. He will make it out of Rebels though, and there's a lot of hope for him to still be around. He could be out with the Chiss higher in a second. But thank you, John and Milo, for the questions about Thrawn. One of my favorite characters. Always happy to talk with Thrawn do. Okay, so let's talk about balancing the Force. Now, this question comes to us from Garrett T. So big post that he made, a lot of good stuff in the post, but essentially talking about how maybe the Force has never really been balanced. He didn't feel as though the Force was balanced after episode 6. I mean, there's still a Jedi, there's still Luke. So how could the Force actually be balanced, and what would an ending in episode 9 look like that tied all of the saga films together and actually balanced the Force? I'm a big proponent of the Rey and Kylo yin and yang theory, that Rey and Kylo together will balance the Force. I'm a sucker for the Reylo stuff. What can I say? But that is kind of what I think is going to happen. But let's talk about balance. So I think what's interesting here is you say that you didn't feel as though the Force was balanced after episode 6, but Luke Skywalker directly contradicts that statement in The Last Jedi. He says, for a long time, there was balance. And then I saw my nephew, Ben. And so Luke is implying that there was balance, okay? And you have to think about this. Well, how could that happen? If there's only a Jedi, how could there be balance? Well, I think the obvious answer is the Prime Jedi. The idea of the actual Jedi, right? The true Jedi, not the kind of bastardized hand-me-down version of the Jedi Code, which was adopted by Yoda's Jedi, but like the true Jedi, you know, the Ashla and the Bogan, the Prime Jedi. The idea of the Prime Jedi is to have balance. It is to embody qualities of the dark side and the light side, and to allow them to exist within you. And we know that Luke Skywalker has flirted with the dark side. I mean, he dresses in all black, just like his father when he shows up to Jabba's palace. He blows up a couple hearts from the homies that were supposed to guard. And then, you know, killing the Rancor, feeling the anger at the end when he beats his father and cuts off his hand, but then he pulls it back, right? So I think the idea of Luke being balanced was, even though he was passive and did probably embody ideal light side Jedi, because he was learning about the Prime Jedi, I think that he sort of was embodying the light and the dark. Now, here's the thing. What I'm talking about when it comes to Kylo Ren and Rey balancing the Force is that I think that the creation of Anakin Skywalker was a wound in the Force. It was this thing that set the balance off. It didn't allow balance to be truly there. And even though the prophecy spoke that this one would be the one to balance the Force, I think the creation of Anakin set the galaxy on a weird path, and that wound is something that needs to be addressed. So there's a way that they could sort of tell us that this journey of the Skywalker line is meant to balance the Force, but like that's an ebb and a flow. So like our perspective as mortal beings, right, is like, hey man, it's out of balance right now. But think about it, man. If there's an ebb and a flow to this thing, if it's essentially like there hit dark period of darkness and then a period of light and back and forth like that, that technically is balance. So on the macro, we could be experiencing balance already. It's just not something that is super clear to us because we're focused on the here and the now. But going back to the wound in the Force thing, it's possible that whatever happened with Anakin created sort of a vacuum of power or something that needed to be addressed. And that down the line with Kylo Ren and Rey, that they are, because they're an extension of the Skywalker line, I think, not Rey like by blood, but by love and connection. I think that that is what will cause the Force to be balanced. But I think that if you're looking for an ending at the end of episode 9, my personal feeling would be sort of an understanding of what is going to go on between light and dark, and that there will always be conflict, right? That there's peace and conflict. The balance is really that thing in the middle, right? It's that sort of constant state. So perhaps Kylo and Rey at the end of the saga, if they both make it out alive, could come to realize that it's actually better for them to keep their soul identity as light and as dark, and yet still come together in an effort to balance the Force. I really don't know how that could manifest. I think it could be the children, but then we'll go back to the same old conflict moving forward. But that's the thing, right? It's this cyclical thing. It's this repeating of the story time. So I hope that answered your question a little bit, Garrett. And I really do appreciate the question. I think it's really fun. It's a really cool thing to contemplate. What is balance exactly? And let me know in the comment section, like, what do you guys think about that? What do you think about the balancing of the Force? How could it happen in episode 9? Do you have some ideas? Love to hear your thoughts, and I'll be checking out the comments after the show. So let's do the last question, and this comes from Yolene Yoemans, who asks about the Jar Jar Binks Sith theory. Okay, so I've actually never publicly talked about this except like anecdotally on a podcast here and there. So do I think there's any merit to the Jar Jar Binks Sith theory? I would say maybe. There's like a 20% chance that it's real. Okay. Now there's the guy that was the actor that did Jar Jar. He's come out and sort of made a cult following for himself and done viral videos here and there where he's talking about the scene from Sith that was cut out, how there were plans set in motion by him and George and everything like that. Now, the bottom line is it's just an awesome theory, and props to Vincent Vendetta for putting that awesome theory together, as well as all of the other awesome theories that he put. But at the end of the day, I just really don't see it. Like the Sith flip that you see in the first one, the fact that Jar Jar hands power over to Palpatine, all of these things. I mean, I think they're just little plot points. I don't think they thread anything together. And by the way, we already know it's not the case because in the Aftermath novels, Jar Jar is a clown on Naboo. He's a literal clown on Naboo. So, look, if he had Sith powers, would he be, there on Naboo with trying to entertain kids and stuff like that? I don't think so. So, while I do appreciate the theory and it showcases just that awesome thing that happens in the Star Wars fandom, people are so into it and they love drawing these little conclusions here and there. And the memes are great, right? Like the memes are so awesome when it comes to Star Wars. So I think it's an amazing theory, but I think there's barely any validity to it. Now, wait a minute. Why don't I say there's no validity to it? Because what you really have to ask yourself is, had Disney not bought Star Wars, if George had just continued on, would this have sort of been something that happened, right? And to that, I will say maybe. Crazier things have happened, and George is kind of an interesting cat, right? I mean, he told Dave that we're bringing Darth Maul back. It wasn't Dave's idea. Dave had no idea how he was going to do that, but he just decided one day, George did, that he wanted to bring him back, right? So he's been on record also saying that he thinks that Mace Windu survived that fall. So, I mean, like, George likes these kind of things. And I think that he's a very sort of bombastic thinker and just loves the things, the toys that he created, he absolutely loves. So would George have just done it? To that I say maybe. You know what I mean? Especially because he puts that stupid smile in the second of the prequels where Jar Jar looks at the camera and smiles. Just a little wink to everyone that absolutely hates that character. So I wouldn't put it past Uncle George to sort of want to do the Darth Jar Jar Binks theory. So yeah, I wanted to just touch on that, but that's pretty much going to do it for today's show. Make sure you check out the video I put up earlier in the day, which is a video entitled Why Rey is Not a Mary Sue with Evidence from the Last Jedi. It's a very cool little production, just sort of talking about why I think she's not a Mary Sue and some of the evidence to the contrary, but also I understand why people think that. It's a cool video. Check that out. Please, as I keep saying, leave your questions in the comment section of this video, and I'll grab a few of them and I'll put them at the end of next week's video. Let me know how we can improve the show, what guests we should get. I'm about to start doing my show out of the comic book shop tomorrow, actually. So that's going to be very cool. Make sure you subscribe and come back at noon every day, Monday through Friday. But enough with all the shameless plugs, guys. As I always say, I hope you are having an awesome and nerdy day, and I will see you in the next video.